Hello, Wasteland. Alright, so I've had a couple of questions about how to build these guns, the zip guns as I call them. It's really simple. It's a gun made out of a zip tie, a toothpick, but people keep asking, so I'm going to show you. So here we've got a zip tie. You know, pretty standard Dollar Tree full bench. You get 30 for $1. So you can configure these in a couple of ways, but what I'm going to show you today is how to do one that kind of emulates like a 240 machine gun. It's a US medium machine gun, fires a 7.62 cartridge, so on and so forth. You can look it up online. I'm not here to explain that to you. Okay, so here's what you do. You're going to get your zip tie, and the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to cut the tail right off of it. So what I like to do is get an X-Acto knife, sharp blade, you know the deal. Just cut it down. Take a couple of passes, don't cut your fingers off. And it goes flying. Huzzah. Well, there goes that take. Just kidding. Alright, so you've got this. And if you look very closely here, camera's not behaving. You can see that it has a notch in it. Now that notch, very handily enough, looks like the feed mechanism on a machine gun. So what you're going to do is you're simply going to take the tail of the zip tie and insert it into the ratcheting portion of it, and keep going and going and going and pulling and pulling and pulling until you get to the very end. And then you're going to stop once it's flush or mostly flush with the end there. And now what you've got is you've got the side of a machine gun and a nice belt of ammunition. So what do we do next? Alright, well this is where it gets a little, where you get to be a little creative, because what you've got is you've got the side port and feed mechanism for a machine gun. So you can bolt this to pretty much any other sort of mocked up weapon, and you can get something like a 50 cal if you want to do that. You know, if you've got some square styrene or something like that, and you can build that up, and I'll show you how to do that later in another video. But the next thing you're going to want to do, in this case, because we're making a 240 configuration, is I'm going to cut this off right about there. That gives you enough belt to either loop it around and fit it back into your car, or figure out wherever you want to do that. And you know, you can kind of experiment with it. It's a zip tie, you get 30 for $1, figure it out. Okay, so we've got that. The next thing we're going to do, or what I like to do, is because you've got this, and I don't like leaving that exposed because it doesn't really look realistic, although you could feasibly just bolt this to the side of the car and put your barrels on and you're good to go. But what I like to do is I like to cap that off because I like roof-mounted machine guns, and then have the ammo belt coming out the window because I think it looks cool. So what I do is I just kind of eyeball it, take a piece of plastic card here, and you can get these. It's my favorite thing to do. My favorite way to get plastic card is to go and sign up for whatever program, rewards club, whatever, that's free, doesn't cost anything, that they'll give you the card and then tell you have to go online, and then you can just do that every time you go, patronize their business, of course, buy something, don't be a jerk, and get another one. And you'll have plastic card for days if you're building on a budget. So, what we're going to do now is we're just going to cut a line right through it, and no, that's not straight at all. Hooray! Wow, that's pretty terrible. I'm doing pretty awful at this. And peel it away, and then just kind of made it up to the back, see where you like it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut here. Neaten that up a little bit. And then measure, mark, and cut here. And the trick to this is to do this and execute it cleanly without slicing your own fingers off. That's the challenge. That's the challenge with some of these budget builds. And I know that some of you guys out there will be like, well, there's tons of other ways to do this. Yeah, there are. floats. That's not the point. Alright. So now, you have just a tiny little piece of plastic to cap the back of your little machine gun off with. And it'll go on kind of like that. I'm going to trim this up and make it flush, so the plastic will sit nice and neatly on there. Flip it over, and boom. Just like that. It's going to look nice. Okay, so gluing. You've got options for glue. I like Gorilla Glue. So you glue it. So you open your glue, you shake it, you pray that your glue kit didn't seize up on you. You put just a small drop of glue on there, and instead of sticking your fingers together, simply stab your little piece of plastic ever so gently on the tip of your knife, and you just bring it up and push it right into place with your glue. And what this is going to do is it's also going to do a nice job of locking your zip tie in place so it doesn't fall out. Not that that's really a big worry. And what you're going to do is you're going to let this dry thoroughly and wait a little bit. And while you're doing that, you can prepare your barrels. So, barrel material. You've got a couple of choices for barrel material. There's the old go-to, which is a toothpick. You can probably find these around your house if you don't have toothpicks. Well, there's other choices available to you. Another one that I tend to see used a lot are coffee stirrers. Now, the thing about coffee stirrers is they can be a little bit too big, but they work nicely because toothpicks fit inside of them. But you do have a decent diameter here on your tube, although the wall thickness can be a little bit thin, so you've got to kind of make that call as you're building. But to build a 240 style, this is where we're going to go next. And I'm going to use this toothpick here because we're going to go with the cheapest of the cheap, easiest of the easy. So just kind of take your toothpick, roll it on your knife, and cut that off. Now, these are 1/4 inch marks on, or 1/2 inch, 1 centimeter looking marks. So what I do is I measure off 2 of these, roll it, cut that off, and then measure off one that's about half the length, or maybe 1.5 times the length. You want it a little bit shorter, and you'll see why in a moment. It's going to go flying off in some random direction and be lost forever, because that's how it works when you try to make a video. No problem. So we'll toss that aside and chop the tip off of this guy, like so. And now, with the magic of Disney and holding it down properly, you'll be in better shape. And be sure to trim up your ends there and make sure they're nice and neat, and you don't have splintery stuff hanging off, because you want to look like a machine gun. You know, you want to be a wastelander, not a recycler. Well, I guess. If somebody does an eco warrior, like a clean up the wasteland crew, I will laugh forever, but also like just, well, okay, I'll laugh. But it'd be a cool idea. Somebody out there do that. Okay, so now that we have that done, we've got our nice little box here. Go ahead and trim up your plastic card on the edges. I'm going to do this now in front of you and waste your time, because that's how it be like that sometimes. Alright, so we've got that, and there you go. So the next step is we're going to glue these barrels in place. So here's where you have to make a decision, so pay attention. You have to decide whether or not you're going to have a right-hand feed or a left-hand feed machine gun. Now, typically speaking, military machine guns will feed from the right. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a right-hand feed. So in order to make a right-hand feed, and this would then mount over I typically mount this over the passenger side and then just loop this around inside like so, and it goes into the passenger side window as demonstrated here on the Team Graydon car. See, you've got your, this is a 50 cal machine gun, but you've got your feed, and then it goes on the side here, and this is just a piece of straw and another piece of plastic tube there, and that's a piece of plastic. So, but how do we get these to lock in like this? So you simply take a little dab of glue, and you stick the first toothpick on, and then you stick the second one on right underneath it, so, and voila. What you have now is a machine gun. Just adjust it a little bit, get it sitting nicely. You have a machine gun that is suitable to be mounted on your vehicle. Now, these can sometimes be a little bit flimsy, a little bit weak, depending on how well you got your super glue. And now I use gel super glue, but liquid super glue has its advantages too, because you can just let it flow around your barrels and it will concrete them. In this case, you can kind of do the same thing with the gel. Just let it seep in there. And what you can do, if you're brave, is kind of get your X-Acto knife and shape it a little bit so it looks like there's a bit of a weld going on there. Be very careful with this. You'll end up with gunk on the tip of your X-Acto knife and you'll have to scrape it off. But you want your machine gun to look good, so make sure that your barrels are straight. Pinch them together. And you let it dry. And that, Wasteland, is how you make a zip gun, as I call it. Pretty simple, and you can experiment with it. So now I'm going to watch this and see how horrible my job was.